Even though only 2 people watch this show, I like doing this because it helps me personally learn about the hidden context of what people are actually saying. It makes me question why would someone say that. Welcome to Who Said What, and in this show, I'll pick fascinating comments from notable figures, break them down, and explore the broader stories behind it. Now, today, I have 4 interesting comments for you. So, you've probably heard of this gem from L&T Chairman. How long can you stare at your wife? Come to the office on Sunday, work 90 hours a week.
I regret I'm not able to make you work on Sundays, to be honest. If I can make you work on Sundays, I'll be more happier because I work on Sundays also. What do you do sitting at home? How long can you stare at your wife? How long can the wife stare at your husband? Come on, get to the office and start working.
Now I don't get why people are mad at him. I mean, what's wrong with this? Maybe, just maybe, he loses the staring competition with his wife. Also, why the hell wouldn't you want to spend your Sunday looking at PPT slides? I mean, who wants to wake up late on a Sunday and spend lovely time with their family? I mean, that sounds really boring to me. But jokes aside, he's literally paid in crores. He has vested interest, but expecting the same amount of dedication from employees, especially freshers, with the peanut salary seems to be a little unreasonable to me. And by the way, the salary of a fresher today is still the same as it was 20 years back. Maybe he didn't mean what he said. Maybe he just wanted to steal Narayan Murthy's thunder. Now on to the second comment. So Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, recently in a blog post said this. We are now confident we know how to build AGI as we have traditionally understood it. So I really don't know what to make of this. I mean, he knows how to build AGI. Will he ask GPT how to do this? When people talk about AGI, no 2 people mean the same thing, but loosely, AGI means machines that can think and act like humans. AGIs like human can constantly keep evolving and learning from mistakes like how humans would. AGI would mean machines that can teach themselves calculus one day and become a world-class chef the next. Now, if he is saying that he knows how to build this, I take this with a pinch of salt. Maybe another fundraising is around the corner. OpenAI has already raised billions with valuation around $150 billion. And it's not just them. Anthropic, which brings you Claude, is rumored to be raising $2 billion. And Perplexity AI recently closed a $500 million round, pushing its valuation to $9 billion. The stakes are high because training models like GPT-4 cost over $100 million, and the next generation could easily cross $1 billion. It's a costly game, and his bold claim might just be a part of staying ahead in the AI race. For decades, AGI has been more of a theoretical dream than a practical reality. Researchers have debated its feasibility, with skeptics saying it might take 50 or even 100 years to achieve. Today's AI is great at processing data, I mean lots of it, but it's clueless about how the real world works. For instance, if you tell an AI to make coffee, it wouldn't understand that it needs to find a mug first, unless it's specifically programmed to. There's still no consensus on what intelligence is. Is it a problem solving? Does it include consciousness or self-awareness? How do we even measure if AGI is truly general? These aren't just academic questions, they are foundational to whether AGI is even possible. And while Sam's claim is bold, it's worth considering the broader conversation around AI's limitations. This brings me to an interesting comment by economist Tyler Cowen in a podcast with Dwarkesh Patel. In the episode, Tyler points out a fundamental change.
What are the specific bottlenecks?
Humans. Here they are. Bottleneck. Hi.
Tyler's argument is rooted in the idea that even with advanced AI systems, human factors, our institutions, behaviors, and societal readiness are often the real constraints. He explains that integrating tech like AI isn't just a matter of creating them, but also navigating the social, political, and cultural systems that either enable or hinder their adoption. Even if AGI were built tomorrow, these human bottlenecks could slow its diffusion and impact for years. Now, I don't know where Altman's confidence even comes from when he says he knows how to build AGI. Now, while writing for this particular section of the episode, I came across this tweet. Now, I have a question for you. Is Trump a little crazy? He made the news again. I mean, that's an everyday affair, but this particular thing caught my attention. He said he wants to buy Greenland. He also wants Canada and Panama Canal. Now, when I first saw this headline, I just went, what the hell does this even mean? I mean, how can you just wake up one day and say this? I couldn't make sense of the Canada thing at all, but on the Greenland thing, it seems pretty interesting. Interesting because that's the only thing that makes a little bit of sense. This is based on my limited research on the topic, so my understanding will further deepen as I read more in the coming days. But here's why the Greenland deal seems sensible. Greenland isn't just some barren ice-covered island. Sure, 80% of it is covered in ice and only about 57,000 people live there. But this place is loaded with untapped potential. First, its location is gold. Geographically, it's sandwiched between North America, Europe, and Russia, making it a critical spot for anyone who cares about Arctic dominance. The US already has a military base there, which is used for missile detection and space surveillance. But that's just scratching the surface of its strategic importance. The Arctic is melting, and while that's bad for the planet, it's changing the global trade routes. The Northwest Passage, which was once blocked by the ice, is now opening up, creating faster shipping paths. Greenland sits right at the entrance of these routes, making it a key location. On top of that, the Arctic is becoming a battleground for power, with the US, Russia, and China all competing for control. Owning Greenland or having more say over it would give US a big advantage. Then there's the question of what lies beneath the ice. Greenland has vast reserves of rare earth minerals, 43 out of the 50 minerals deemed critical by the US government. These minerals are essential for making everything from electric vehicles to advanced military tech. In short, they are the stuff that keeps the modern world running. There's also a massive amount of oil, an estimated 52 billion barrels sitting offshore. Economically, Greenland is just a mixed bag. Its annual GDP is just $3 billion, which is tiny, roughly a 7,000th of America's GDP. Denmark, which technically owns Greenland, spends about $500 million a year just to keep things running there. The largest industry? Fishing. That's not exactly what you would call a thriving economy. This is where Trump's deal-making mindset might be onto something. Buying Greenland could theoretically benefit both the US and the Greenlanders. For Denmark, which already has limited military resources in the Arctic, this could mean getting rid of a financial and strategic liability. Greenland isn't a colony. Denmark can sell off at will. It has significant autonomy and controls its natural resources, so any deal would require the consent of the people living there. While they've entertained thoughts of independence, they know managing a resource boom could overwhelm their small population, leading to challenges like corruption and inequality. Imagine a tiny town handling Saudi-level oil wealth. It's that kind of scale. Trump's approach, which is threatening military force or tariffs, only alienates the people he needs on board. The people living there value respect and autonomy, not coercion. If this deal were to happen, it would require making Greenlanders enthusiastic partners by offering a future they genuinely believe is better. For now, the idea feels like one of Trump's headline-grabbing stunts. But Greenland is more than just a quirky proposition. It's a geopolitical and resource goldmine where Arctic dominance and future security intersect. Recently, Kashish and Pranav from the team wrote about migration in the Daily Brief, which is our daily show. I'll link the episode in description. So when they wrote about migration, it turned into the topic of the day for us at the office. What kicked off this topic was an intriguing commentary by Dhananjay Sinha, who is the head of research at Systematics Group. He raised some fascinating and frankly less obvious questions about the decline in migration. Questions that challenge the conventional narrative. Questions that are not obvious but should be asked. But before I dive into it, let me first explain what migration actually means. See, migration at its core is about movement, usually from rural areas to urban centers, driven by the hope of better job opportunities, higher wages, and improved living standards. But in recent years, a new trend has emerged: migration declining. The reasons for this shift are far from clear, which makes it so intriguing. The Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister, or EACPM, recently published data suggesting that the rural India is doing quite well. Their study, titled 400 Million Dreams, found that the rural to urban migration had dropped significantly by 53.7 million people, or 11.8% over the past decade. Now, that sounds like really good news to me. I mean, people are not migrating to cities. Maybe it's because of rural doing extremely well. That's what the EACPM attributed this decline to: improved government services in rural areas like healthcare, education, infra, and connectivity, which they believe are giving people fewer reasons to leave their hometowns. It's a comforting hypothesis. The idea that rural India is thriving and people are staying back because they no longer feel the need to flock to overcrowded cities for survival. But Dhananjay Sinha isn't entirely convinced. He argues that this narrative might be oversimplifying the situation. In his view, the story of reverse migration might not be about rural abundance at all. Instead, it could reflect something more concerning: the diminishing appeal of urban centers. Let's look at some of the data. The EAC PM study highlighted that remittances, which is money sent home by migrants, have declined in many states like Bihar, UP, and Madhya Pradesh, traditionally known for outbound migration. Fewer remittances might mean fewer people living in the first place, which challenges the idea of thriving rural economies. It suggests that people may not be staying back because they're finding great opportunities in rural areas, but because cities are no longer the magnets they used to be. Sinha also points to stagnating urban growth as possible factor. Urban centers, which once symbolized opportunity and upward mobility, are now grappling with slowing economic activity, rising cost of living, and limited job creation. Combine this with the rise of automation and the effects of pandemic, and you have a scenario where urban India might not seem worth the risk for many rural workers. And by the way, if rural was actually getting attractive, it would mean that rural wages would be growing much faster. But if we look at the data, the rural wage growth is barely keeping up with inflation. So it can't be that people are moving to rural because of decent opportunities here, because rural wage growth gives us a picture. And then there's the question of rural infra. The study cites government programs like rural electrification and the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin as key drivers of reverse migration. But Sinha points out that these developments, while important, don't fully explain the trend. For instance, 86% of rural India was already electrified by 2001, long before migration trends began reversing. Similarly, while the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana has added millions of houses in rural areas, the growth rate of these projects hasn't been as transformative as one might expect. So what's really going on here? The truth probably lies somewhere in between, but nobody can really say why the rural to urban migration is declining. That's all for this episode. If you have any feedback for me, please let me know in the comments below.